Madalyn Murray O'Hair wasn't just outspoken, she was famous for leading the charge against religion in America. Her fight put her in the spotlight and made her a lightning rod for controversy. So when she and her family vanished without a trace, people assumed the worst. Someone finally got revenge on the most hated woman in America. For 5 years, the mystery of what happened to Madalyn, her son, and her granddaughter went unsolved until a few key tips and one relentless journalist uncovered the shocking truth behind their disappearance. Let's recap. When employees at the American Atheist organization showed up for work on August 28, 1995, they were greeted by a strange note taped to the door. It read, "The Murray O'Hair family has been called out of town on an emergency basis. We do not know how long we will be gone at the time of the writing of this memo." The message was vague and raised eyebrows immediately. Rumors spread that the group's founder, Madalyn Murray, and her son John and granddaughter Robin had drained the organization's bank accounts and disappeared. It seemed like the kind of dramatic exit only Madalyn could pull off. Some employees decided to check out her house in Austin, Texas. When they got there, they found no signs of a break-in or struggle, but it was clear something was off. The place looked like they'd left in a rush. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink, and most unsettling of all, her 3 little dogs had been left behind without food or water. For anyone who knew 76-year-old Madalyn, this was a glaring red flag. She adored those dogs, probably even more than she despised organized religion. Whatever happened, it wasn't looking good, and there were plenty of suspects. Madalyn Murray O'Hair had enemies everywhere. Her life wasn't just controversial. It was a whirlwind of lawsuits, family drama, and jaw-dropping twists that set the stage for her disappearance. In the early 60s, Madalyn and her 2 sons, Bill and John, were living in Baltimore when she hit her breaking point. Bill, a high school freshman, was forced to recite the Lord's Prayer at school. Madalyn wasn't having it. She told him to track every religious moment at school. And 2 weeks later, she filed a lawsuit. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court, where Madalyn won. The ruling made her infamous. Dubbed the most hated woman in America, she rode the wave of controversy onto talk shows like The Tonight Show and even Playboy. Bill later joked that the most dangerous place in the world was between his mom and a camera. In 1963, she started American Atheists, a tax-exempt nonprofit that critics said ran like a megachurch, but with anti-religion as its gospel. Donations poured in, and Madalyn became a lightning rod for controversy. Meanwhile, Bill was over it. He felt like his mom had used him as a pawn, and in a shocking move, publicly converted to evangelical Christianity on Mother's Day in 1980. He didn't just stop there. He became a Baptist minister and turned his new faith into a weapon against his mom, airing all her dirty laundry. He claimed she was a secret communist, tried defecting to the Soviet Union twice, even they said no thanks, and hosted underground meetings in her basement. Whether that's true or not, it's clear their relationship was beyond repair. Madalyn's life also had plenty of legal drama. She once fled to Hawaii and Mexico after allegedly assaulting cops who came to take Bill's pregnant girlfriend, Susan, back to her parents. Susan eventually had a baby, Robin, who Bill abandoned when he left the family. Madalyn adopted Robin, and the two stayed inseparable until Madalyn, her son John, and Robin vanished in 1995. It's a saga of lawsuits, family feuds, and drama that could rival any soap opera. But Madalyn wasn't the only one in her family who could rub people the wrong way. Working for the Murray O'Hair clan at American Atheist sounded like a total nightmare. Susan, John, and Robin were reportedly miserable bosses, making it hard to keep employees around. According to Bill, Madalyn started hiring ex-cons just to keep the office running. They were the only ones willing to tolerate the abuse for minimum wage. One of those hires was David Waters, a 40-something felon brought on in 1993. Not long after, things at the office started disappearing. Computers, expensive equipment, even valuable bonds from the office safe. Madalyn was convinced it had to be an inside job, but she never directly accused David. In fact, she trusted him enough to let him oversee their offshore bank accounts while the family dealt with a legal battle in California. That trust turned out to be a huge mistake. When the Murray O'Hairs returned to Texas, they found chaos. David had fired half the staff, shut down the office, and emptied $50,000 from their accounts. Madalyn was livid. She pressed charges against him, but court dates kept getting delayed. Frustrated and out of options, she decided to fight back her own way by publicly destroying David's reputation. In her American Atheist newsletter, she unleashed on him, calling him a cold-blooded animal and accusing him of horrifying acts. She claimed he'd beaten a boy to death as a teenager, physically abused his own mother, and even urinated on her face for his own twisted amusement. It's unclear if any of these accusations are true. The bad blood between Madalyn and David Waters seemed to boil over in August 1995, the same time Madalyn, John, and Robin mysteriously disappeared. At first, it looked like the Murray O'Hairs had skipped town on their own. John was still in contact with a few employees at American Atheists throughout September, claiming they'd been called away on urgent business but couldn't share any details. Robin occasionally got on the phone too, but her focus was oddly specific. She seemed deeply worried about the family dogs. As the weeks went by, those calls got weirder. Employees couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The last anyone heard from Robin, she sounded panicked, telling one employee, "I know you will do the right thing." After that, silence. By September 28, 1995, the Murray O'Hairs had completely vanished. Rumors started swirling that Madalyn was dead, but American Atheists shut them down fast. They insisted there was no foul play and denied that any organizational funds were missing. Then in October 1995, something gruesome turned up near a riverbank in Dallas. Police found a naked, headless, handless body dumped in the weeds among piles of garbage. Investigators compared the remains to over 200 missing persons cases, but none of them matched. Now, keep that discovery in the back of your mind because it'll be a key piece in unraveling what really happened to Madalyn Murray O'Hair. The next big break came in 1996 when San Antonio reporter John MacCormack was assigned to cover the one-year anniversary of the Murray O'Hair family's disappearance. A tip pointed MacCormack toward American Atheists' 1995 tax returns. And there it was, a $600,000 withdrawal in September, the same month Madalyn, John, and Robin vanished. Teaming up with a private investigator, MacCormack dug deeper. John's phone records revealed nearly 200 calls in the weeks leading up to their disappearance, to travel agencies, jewelers, and banks. One of those calls led him to a San Antonio jewelry store. The jeweler confirmed that John had been there on September 29, 1995 to pick up $600,000 worth of gold coins. John didn't seem nervous, but there was something strange about him. He smelled terrible, like he hadn't bathed in days. A security guard walked John to his car, coins in tow. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. 2 more years passed without answers until 1998 when MacCormack got the tip that cracked the case wide open. A caller mentioned their friend Danny Fry, who had also vanished in 1995 right around the same time the Murray O'Hairs disappeared. Danny, it turned out, had traveled from Florida to Texas that summer to meet up with an old prison buddy, David Waters. Along with a third man, Gary Karr, the trio was planning a job that promised a big payday. MacCormack remembered something, the headless, handless body found by the river in Dallas back in 1995. Danny's family provided a DNA sample, and bingo, it was a match. That discovery led investigators straight to David Waters and Gary Karr. Gary, another ex-con in his 50s with a rap sheet for rape and kidnapping, had been staying in Texas with Waters and Fry during the exact time frame when the Murray O'Hairs vanished. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fall into place. Federal agents raided the homes of David Waters and Gary Karr, hoping to find evidence tying them to Madalyn's disappearance. While they didn't find anything directly linking the men to her, they did uncover guns and ammunition enough to arrest both on parole violations. As police dug deeper, a chilling theory emerged about what likely happened to Madalyn, John, and Robin. Investigators believed the trio was kidnapped on August 27, 1995. For the next month, David, Gary, and Danny Fry held them captive, shuffling them between Austin area motels. While John was forced to purchase $600,000 in gold coins, Danny kept an eye on Madalyn and Robin. By late September, the clock ran out. Police suspect that on September 29th, David strangled all three in a motel room. The bodies were then taken to a storage locker where they were dismembered. But the betrayal didn't stop there. For reasons still unclear, David and Gary turned on Danny Fry, shooting him and cutting off his head and hands before dumping his body in Dallas. The remains of the Murray O'Hair family and Danny Fry were sealed in 50-gallon drums and buried on a remote ranch 120 miles away. Meanwhile, David and Gary stashed the gold coins in another storage locker. But fate had other plans. Before they could retrieve the loot, the locker was robbed and the thieves spent almost all the coins in Vegas, leaving just one behind, which was given to someone's aunt as a keepsake. In the end, David and Gary's perfect crime fell apart spectacularly. The FBI arrested them, and while they believe 8 to 10 others may have been involved, the masterminds were left with nothing but prison time and a failed plan. Gary Karr's trial kicked off in May 2000, but without solid proof of murder, the charges didn't stick. Instead, he was nailed for money laundering and extortion. With his history of violent crimes, the judge made sure he'd never walk free again, sentencing him to life in prison. As for David Waters, he dodged murder charges altogether by cutting a deal. He agreed to reveal where the Murray O'Hairs were buried in exchange for a plea deal. In January 2001, David led investigators to a desolate ranch. What they found was gruesome. Skulls, bones, and charred clothing, all pointing to the horrifying truth. The bodies had been burned before being buried. David didn't get to enjoy his freedom for long. He passed away from lung cancer in 2003, taking his secrets with him. The remains of Madalyn, John, and Robin were handed over to Bill Murray. Despite his complicated relationship with his mother, Bill respected her final wishes and didn't say a prayer over her grave. Madalyn made it clear how she wanted to go out. In her words, she wanted her carcass flung into the water so the fish could eat it with no dirty Christers praying over her. She probably didn't picture her end involving a 50-gallon drum and a remote ranch, but for someone who thrived on controversy, it seems her story couldn't end any other way. Do you think the courts should have pushed harder for murder charges against David Waters and Gary Karr, even without a body at first? What part of this story shocked you the most? Let's talk about it in the comments, and if you like getting all the crime in half the time, remember to give this a like and subscribe so you never miss a story. I'm Chris. Amy and I are here 3 times a week with new recaps. Until next time, take care.